Hi everybody, Rusty here. I know it's been a while since I last posted on my hiking channel, but I've finally undertaken a hike and this is my trip report about it. It was a 120-mile training hike on the Metacomet-Monadnock and Monadnock Sunapee Greenway trails. All my hikes have a purpose. I mean, first and foremost, primarily, it's to enjoy the experience, so that's certainly true of all hikes. It's also to get in some physical conditioning. But this particular hike was undertaken for a very specific reason, and that was to get me prepared for completing the Appalachian Trail up in Maine, going northward from Munson, Maine, up to Mount Katahdin and through the 100-mile wilderness. And that meant I have to make sure that I can carry a full 8 days worth of food with me so that I can get through the 100-mile wilderness. I also need to make sure that my battery, my backup battery, this one here, will last and keep my phone charged and my tracker charged, more importantly, for the whole duration of the trip, which should be about 8 days through the 100-mile wilderness plus another day to get up to the top of Mount Katahdin and back. And finally, of course, I want to learn things on all my hikes, so let's take a look at it. Here's my tracker log of the trip. This was kind of a pieced together, choose your own adventure, 120 miles. I started out in Shutesbury, Massachusetts, and I hiked up to the Massachusetts-New Hampshire border along the New England Scenic Trail. It's also the Metacomet-Monadnock Trail at that point, but I have my far out application that tells me where water supplies are, tells me where shelters are, tells me all sorts of different interesting things that I'd like to know while I'm out hiking. And I didn't have that for the next section, which is from the New Hampshire border up to the foot of Monadnock. I had to do it the old-fashioned way. I had to use paper maps to find whatever I wanted to find. Now, there is the town of Troy, New Hampshire in this stretch. I didn't use it for resupply. I did use it to do laundry. I did treat myself to that. But the point about not resupplying, even though the opportunity was there, is because this is, like I said, a training trip for that 100-mile stretch up in Maine where I won't have the resupply opportunity. After I got to the foot of Mount Monadnock, I actually got off the Metacomet-Monadnock Trail and I took a bunch of side trails over to the Gilson Pond campsite in the Monadnock State Park. I've stayed there many times before. It's just a great place to stay. I did manage to get a shower, which is also something I won't get in a 100-mile wilderness. But it was just a good break from things. It turned out to be just a 10-mile day of hiking, and I could camp out on a tent platform and really be ready to hit Mount Monadnock the next morning, which I did following the Red Spot Trail to the Monadnock summit. I'm always a little worried that it's going to be too hard this time, but I get over it pretty well. I think I steel myself to it and I do pretty well getting over it. From there, I went on to the Monadnock Sunapee Greenway. My plan was to go down to either the ski resort area or down to the state park on that end, get a campsite, call for an Uber for the next morning to get a ride to White River Junction, and then I was going to take the Amtrak train from White River Junction down to Northampton where I'd get picked up. My idea was I was trying to do this without Darlene having to make some kind of commitment that would tie her hands. It ended up working out very well, and you'll see why. One of the things about this trip that is different than what I will experience in the 100-mile wilderness is I have to employ my 7 o'clock rule for camping. Now, I have a 6 o'clock rule and a 7 o'clock rule, and despite the similarities in name, they're actually very different. The 6 o'clock rule is what I'll be following when I'm in Maine, says basically that if I'm out on the trail and it's hit 6 p.m., it's time to start looking for a campsite. If I have one that's within a mile or something that I know I'm trying to get to, I'll just go on to it. But if I'm not sure, it's time to start looking for a place to camp. And in the 100-mile wilderness, you can do that. There is stealth camping allowed at established campsites, but they're not formal campsites. So that's the 6 o'clock rule. The 7 o'clock rule is something that I have to employ when I'm in areas where camping is restricted. For example, in the Smoky Mountains last year, I had to use the 7 o'clock rule. It applies here because this pieced together adventure that I was taking goes over a lot of private lands, and camping is restricted to designated campsites only. And what the 7 o'clock rule says basically is if I'm at a legal designated campsite and I can't get to the next one by 7 p.m., I have to stay put. But what this ends up doing is selecting your distances for you. If I'm able to stealth camp, well then I have some leeway, and if I want to do a 15-mile day, I can do an approximately 15-mile day. Maybe it'll be 14 and a half, maybe it'll be 15 and a half. When the 7 o'clock rule is enforced, I basically just got to hit the designated campsites, and as we'll see, on a couple occasions that made for some very long days, longer than I really expected to be doing that early in a trip. 20 miles is about my limit. I have done more than 20 miles on occasion. Well, on this trip, I ended up having to hit 20 miles in the first week, and usually I'm not ready to do 20 miles into my second week of hiking. I won't have a second week of hiking in these trips. So of course, there are always lessons. First of all, I can carry 8 days of food. My backpack, however, made it kind of difficult. My backpack is not made for a 40-pound load, and that's what I would start out with. It would be down to low 20s with just water and 1 day's worth of food by the end of the trip. But early in the trip, I was carrying 40 pounds approximately, maybe it was 38 or something like that. And my backpack's just not made for it. It's a Z-Packs Arc Haul 50-liter capacity. It's got staves in it. It's an older model, so the staves basically get their curves in them to keep the pack away from your back. But when you overload that backpack, it kind of contorts its shape, the staves bow to the side, and defeats the purpose of the pack. Now I have ordered a much larger capacity one, a 70-liter one, same brand. The newer models, the staves actually come pre-bent and a little more rigid, and that should keep it off my back. So that's what I'll be using when I go up to Maine. But I struggled along with this one for this 120 miles. It got easier as time went on, but it made for some discomfort during the trip. My battery here did last. It finally gave out on my last day. Now I still had 80% capacity on my phone. My tracker was fully charged at that point. So I did make it through, but that was a lesson, an important lesson, that if I'm going to get through the 100-mile wilderness and up to Mount Katahdin with my electronics working, I'm going to have to conserve them a little bit. I was forced to do 20 miles early in this trip because of the 7 o'clock rule. I did it, but it was very tiring, and I had to follow it up with a 17-mile day. So those are pretty long days. I'm nearly 67 years old, carrying a heavy pack and going on some pretty steep climbs, as the second half of the trip had a lot of those. It was a challenge, but I was able to get through it. Another thing I learned, and this is quite by accident, but this was great. My last night on the trail, I was the only person in a shelter, and I had to get up in the middle of the night for the reason that a lot of old guys have to get up in the middle of the night. And just as practice, I had decided to take my headlamp, and as a courtesy, when there are other hikers around, you normally put your headlamp into red, a red filter on it. It's something about it doesn't disturb the other hikers as much if you have a red light versus a bright white light. Well, as I was getting it to red, just as practice, even though there was nobody else around, it went through green. And I noticed when I had the green light on, the mosquitoes, there were 2 of them that had been harassing me all night, suddenly went really quiet. And I turned it off, and they started buzzing again. And I turned on the green light, and they went quiet. I said, well, I guess the bugs don't like green lights. When I got back home, I looked it up on the internet. Indeed, the bugs are fearful. They get into some kind of scared state in the presence of green light. Well, that was just kind of an interesting thing to learn, because when I get into my tent, you have to open the mosquito mesh, and a mosquito, 1 or 2, will sometimes sneak in there with you, and then they'll just harass you all night. Well, if this green light thing is going to work, then I'll turn the green light on, and the bugs will freak out and freeze up enough for me to find them and kill them, I guess. So that was just a great thing to learn. Another thing that I learned is that if I take an oxygen absorber, those are the things that come in prepackaged meals. You know, they say take it out and it says do not eat on it, like you're going to eat a piece of plastic thing. If I put that in my cook kit as I stow it, because no matter how much I try to dry it, it's still got some residual water in it. And of course I don't want it to rust or anything. Well, if I just throw one of those in it, by the end of the day, when I go to open up the cook kit again, it's perfectly dry. The oxygen absorber takes care of that. So that's just a cute little, neat little tip for people. So now let's go out to the trail for a few clips and some photographs. It's nice to walk along these. We're near the Quabbin Reservoir. These old roads, I don't know if they were at one point part of the towns that got flooded by the reservoir. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But here we are today. Right after I stopped to eat in a field, I came across this part of this park. Picnic tables all over the place. So I could have stopped and ate at a picnic table, which would have been much more convenient. I did stop at one of the picnic tables and at least empty my shoes out, which I forgot to do when I was sitting in the field. Anyways, I've got about 4 more miles to get to the shelter, a little bit less. All in all, pretty nice first day. Pretty flat hiking. Nice little swimming area here. They do have a lifesaver over there, so I know it's open for wading or swimming with the geese. If I weren't alone, I might actually go in there, like if Mike was with me, because Mike likes to go swimming in. This would be a good place. I could soak my feet. I've got plenty of time. I don't know. Just a nice little place. It's only like 2:30. I'm very close to the shelter. Okay, here's the Window State Forest shelter. In the notes, hey, there's no privy here. That's in the far out notes. But in fact, there is one back up that way. Near the top of the next rise is the parking lot, and there's that swimming area that I just showed you. Not really any good flat spots to pitch a tent here, so I might have to use the shelter tonight. I'll scout around. I would much rather have had this water yesterday. The water I had to pick up was full of tannin. It's really not dangerous, but the filter doesn't take it out, just colors the water a bit. This seems to be much cleaner, clearer of tannin. I don't need water right now, or I would stop and fill here. Well, not a lot to see out there, but at least it's a view. First view I've gotten in the 20 miles that I've hiked from Shutesbury up to here. Well, the place I'm staying tonight has no water. It's another 1.5 miles. So I've got to fill up here best I can, camo up, maybe carry an extra half gallon or something. I hate doing that by hand, but I don't have much of a choice. I'm gonna have to fill my platypus bladder all the way up. So that's 3 liters. Plus I got another 1.5 liters in my spare bottle. Yeah, my spare bottle over there. I thought I lost it for a second. And then see what I can do from there. Campground in the morning. The sun is just showing up there, which the camera can't pick up very well because it has to filter the bright light out. But sunrise at the campsite. Okay, this may seem a little off color, but we're actually going to go into the privy just to show what it's like. As you can see, like I said before, this is not your Uncle Ted's outhouse. It's actually quite nice in here. Freshly built. Smell of fresh wood still. To flush, you take a handful of mulch and toss it on top of it. There are 4 trap doors here. Well, 3, because the other one's got the toilet on it. And what they do is, after one side fills, it actually composts with all the mulch and everything, and they spread it over the forest floor. So I'm just in here to change, so you don't have to be disgusted by any thoughts. I've just come up to climb up Mount Grace. Absolutely humid day. I'm just drenched with sweat. I'm hoping by leaving my shirt in the breeze up there, it'll dry somewhat. Lock in the freshness. Okay, the fire tower room up here is actually locked, so this is as high as I can get. You can see a very interesting view of the surrounding area. I hate it when they lock these things. This is the Mount Grace shelter area. It is only 11:15, so applying the 7 o'clock rule, it's 9.8 miles to the next shelter. I should be able to make that in under 8 hours, though it's hot and humid, so it is going to be a tough day today. I may need to use every one of those 8 hours by having frequent stops. I did just stop up the hill from here for water because I was pretty low, and I knew there was water here, but I wasn't sure about the quality of it. There was some confusing indications. I think actually this is probably the same stream that I filled up on. I was just farther upstream. So there's a stream over there. This would be okay for camping. Not a lot of flat spots, but I could put down a place and I'd probably sleep in the shelter. But I'm going to try for the next one. Oh, there's a shelter I stayed at last night. I was the only one there. It's big enough for about 12. Came across this bridge. This was the water supply. Running well enough, but really filled with tannin. Very dark brown. Tastes all right after filtered. You know, safe enough. I guess tannin doesn't hurt. I'm going to look that up when I get home. But I'm going to dump the water that I have with me as soon as I come to a clearer stream. and refill. I'm about to head to the border of New Hampshire, and then that's the end of the New England Scenic Trail. And for the next 18 miles or so, all I'm going to have is paper maps to go by. I don't know what the terrain is going to be like. I really don't know the distances all that much. My goal is to get to Troy today and stay at the Troy tent site. Just as I entered this section, there was a sign that said, hikers are welcome, indicating basically it's an active logging area, and be very careful to follow the blazes when you come across areas like this. So yeah, they've been logging around here. So after having that dark tannin-filled water from last night, all the streams that I found in the meantime, until now, about 3 hours into this hike, a little bit more, were really deep, filled with tannin. And then I finally came across this stream, which has a little bit in it, but it's generally pretty clear. You see the bag hanging over there. I threw out the dark water. Ugh. So you can see close up, I don't know if it's showing the camera, there's a tiny bit of a tinge to it. But yeah, this is a good flowing stream. This is the summit of Little Monadnock. 1,500 feet lower than Grand Monadnock, which you can't see from here. There's no view. At least there's an opening. Good place to have lunch. That's what we'll do. The only thing I've come across so far that resembles a bald. Nice open field. This is on the ridge of Little Monadnock. I'm wondering if when I get up there to that opening, I'm going to be able to see Grand Monadnock. Now, this is not very far. It's only about 15 or 20 feet. I just came down it, and it's one of those where I had to put the sticks aside and use my hands and toe holds and everything else to get up this, or to get down this in my case. It was not easy. Here's the tent site itself, platform, which is good. Things to sit on. Suppose over here is where I could cook, be away from the tent. I don't know. I don't know what all the amenities are for, but it's certainly nice. Fire extinguisher wash bucket there, so if you do have a fire, you fill that with water and be ready to extinguish it. I won't be doing that. I don't see any point in having a fire just for the sake of it. So they've got a broom for me. So I'm going to, in a rake, I'm going to clear off the tent platform and set up my tent. After a real nice stay in Troy, New Hampshire, a private camp, free, came up here. It's about to throw down my pack, but got to see this buddy right here. I don't know if that's live or dead, but there is a snake there. So this is Gap Mountain, and there is Mount Monadnock. Just taking a nice long rest here. Discovered there's lots of blueberries. Well, I've made it to the Monadnock State Park headquarters. And my tracker says I've gone 6.8 miles already. I thought it was only going to be 6.3 miles over to Gilson Pond, so I underestimated that. Measured something wrong. Because the tracker underestimates because it does crow flyage distance between points. So I've probably come about 7.5 miles. And I've got at least 2 miles more to get over there, maybe more. Kind of hard to see, but there's actually a fawn standing right there. I don't know where the mommy is. Hi, little fawn. Oh, there's Gilson Pond, the smaller one, towards the front of this frame. Forget the name of that other one. There's a beach down there. That's what I come up. This is what rock climbing, this is what climbing a mountain should be like. Okay, I believe that is the summit. I don't think you go up there and then you see something higher, but maybe. It can fool you sometimes. I've come up the Red Spot Trail. First time I've ever taken this trail was the most direct, which means the steepest. I'm at the top of the Red Spot Trail, where it intersects with the Humpeley Trail. Beautiful view out there. And beautiful view up there. Here's the intersection. And there's the summit. Boston out that way. one out there is Mount Wachusett, Greylock. Probably can't be picked up by this camera, but it's just barely discernible on the horizon. It's actually disappeared in the haze again. I could see it a few minutes ago. Real quick, I'm told that peak out there is actually a Monadnock somewhere this way. And the guys were saying you could see Mount Moosilauke out there somewhere. And on a real clear day, you can actually see Boston peeking through. This is the Dublin Trail, Marlborough and Dublin Trails. And also the Monadnock Sunapee Greenway. I guess they'll split eventually. There's only a certain number of trails that you can get off. Used to get off the top of Mount Monadnock. And when I pulled my platypus bladder out of my bag, I still actually had a good liter left. I thought I was running low. Only used about half of it, but you know, I bandana filtered into the reservoir and you can see how clear that water is. So despite what it might look like here, it's actually very good water. A lot of today's hike has been on dirt roads, which is what I'm on right now. Which actually I don't mind. It's a nice break. You can make good time. And there's a little field down here. Just an opening. The field doesn't seem like it's being used for crop. But this is just a nice little New England dirt road. This is Nelson, New Hampshire. We've got a little church over there, I guess. The Nelson Town Hall. The Nelson Library. And there is a spigot on the side that is giving water. So I'm dumping this tannin-laced water that I got. And I see a mark up there. So I missed the turn mark, but that's okay. Because now I see the mark. So that's where I'm headed up that road next. I decided I have time to stop and soak my feet in this. I haven't soaked my feet in a stream in about 4 days. Maybe 5 days since the second day. So I'm going to do it now. I'm at a tower, so I'm going to go up it. This is the Pritchard Mountain Tower. There are blueberry patches here, which are open to the public for picking. And unfortunately, even though just 30 miles south of here, on Gap Mountain, there were blueberries, they are not ready here. Even a mile or two south of here, I was on some little hill, and there were blueberries there, but they were all green. Yeah, and this fire tower is closed at the top, but that's okay. I don't need to go any higher. So this is the view. I wish I knew how to identify Mount Sunapee out there. I mean, maybe it's that, I don't know. Okay, this is what it looks like in this part of the Andorra State Forest. I think that's what it's called. Trail today has been following a lot of dirt roads, which is actually kind of nice. It's a nice break. You can make good time on them. Oh, butterflies. A lot of people think about, you know, the fun about hiking. Long hike like this is going to be like this, which would be very enjoyable other than it being out in the sun. I wouldn't want to be out in the sun all day in something like this. But this is actually very rare. On this trip I've done, I don't know, between 90 and 100 miles, Mark, so I know I'm on the right path. And a lot of it has been on dirt roads, because this particular trail does a lot of that, following of dirt roads, which is okay too. But this is kind of unusual. Oh, I just scared up some partridges, I believe. Yay, I'm at the halfway point. The MSG is the Monadnock Sunapee Greenway. And this is the halfway part in those fields that I was showing earlier. This is something I've only seen 2 of so far, ever. Both of them on this trail, and that is a through hiker trash can. You have to unscrew, turn it around about 5 times to get it unscrewed. I was coming down the hill that way. You can kind of see the bridge through the trees there, kind of. And I noticed there was some trash on the side. And I'm like, oh, by rights I should pick it up. But I didn't feel like carrying trash all that way. And I knew there were some trail maintainers around, so maybe they'd see it. But it was right down there by that bridge. So when I saw the trash can here, I said, maybe somebody couldn't get the trash can open, so they just left it by the side of it, and some animal brought it down there. Who knows? So it's a little bench here, so I put my pack down, went back and got the trash. So that was my good deed for the day. A couple miles still from Mount Sunapee, at least a couple miles. And yeah, this is a nice hiking area. It says there's a view out there, but obviously I'm just going to be looking at a cloud, so I'm not going to bother. But, this is one of the nicer parts of the trail. I like it when we get above the tree, into the scrubby trees. Well, this is Lake Solitude. There's supposedly some campsites around here, even though they're posted as no camping anymore. A nice little lake up here in the middle of nowheres. No swimming allowed, nothing. The last ascent up Sunapee was up a road, which was a blessing. Because I knew I had a 200-foot ascent in a very short time. It's much easier on a road. I see the chairlift is running. Wonder if there's anybody up there who can tell me. I'll pay for a ride down. So this is the terminus of the hike. Well, I talked to the attendant and he tells me that yeah, I can get a ride down the ski lift for 23 bucks. Because it's $23 for all day lift ticket. And you fill out a waiver, and so then you go down there and for a one-way trip, 23 bucks with all the time that I've got, because it's only 9:40. Darlene's supposed to pick me up at noon. Even if she gets there early, I'm going to be there and probably waiting for a while, because she was just going to be leaving at 9:30. So what he suggested was that I go down the Bonanza Trail and just follow the towers down. So I got to find this. He said not the Blast-Off Trail. He said the Bonanza Trail. There it is. There's the Bonanza Trail. So I hope this is unlike that thing Craig and I went down, where they hadn't brush hogged it or anything, and it was a horrible climb down the ski slopes. But this will just be a nice little walk down. So I'm gonna see if I can see where Darlene is. So that was this trip. It was really a training trip more than anything else. But if you enjoyed it, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll always know when I'm posting something new. Thanks for listening.